So hello everybody and welcome to episode 2 of Therapists in Conversation. And I'm so happy to see everybody here. And tonight we're going to be discussing the topic of mindset, but mindset of healing versus the mindset of dis-ease. So I'm going to throw the floor open and Fiona, actually, would you introduce yourself to everyone? And give us a quick summary of, see, this is what happens when you come in new. Give us a quick summary of who you are and what you do.
Certainly. So I'm Fiona Whitfield and my company is The Life Reboot. I help women who are fed up of being on the diet cycle or basically forcing themselves to try and be fit. There seems to come a magic point around midlife to do with menopause possibly, when they just don't want to do that anymore, fed up of the same forcing, the energy behind the forcing, trying to be fit, and they want to do something very different. And so I help them to come back to their hearts and so that they can love themselves healthily, quite literally. So it's all about expansion of the heart and tuning into what their body, what their soul is really crying out to do.
Really, thank you. Angela, you want to give it a go?
Sure, I'm Angela Daye. I'm a health kinesiology practitioner, so I work with pretty much anyone. I can work with teeny tiny babies up to whatever age you're still around, and I'm working on anything from a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual level, removing blockers and helping you achieve your goals and your dreams.
Thank you. Trudi?
Hi everyone, I'm Trudi. I'm based in Wiltshire. I'm a Reiki master teacher and holistic practitioner, and offering a couple of options online at the moment.
Thank you. Bonnie?
Hi everyone, my name is Crosby and I run a private psychotherapeutic practice in East London, and I am also CEO of an accreditation organisation that has only been founded in the last year. We're coming up to our first birthday. And I work with pretty much everything that anybody's come into me with in the last 17 years. So that's what I do, and I love my vocation.
Thanks, Sue. Sue Winsbury?
Hi, I'm Susan and I'm from Essex and I have Crystal Souls, and I'm a therapist and I have my home therapy studio as well as I'm mobile. And with another team member, we go out and we practice reflexology, massage, and Indian head. And we love what we do.
Groovy. And Sue W?
Hello, I am Sue Winsbury. I am the energy queen. So I have 16, 17 years in health and wellbeing, in therapies. I'm a qualified chronic fatigue recovery specialist, and I help people on a physical, emotional, and very much spiritual basis. And I would much rather help people prevent burnout than help them recover, because it's a lot easier to prevent.
Okay, so that just leaves me, and I'm Leslie Marsh, and I'm a shamanic consultant, storyteller, speaker, and sometime erstwhile therapist, particularly in lockdown, because we all need our own therapy at the moment, I think. So let's get started. First of all, mindset. Everything that we do, I think we'll all agree, has got something to do with mindset. We all have to deal with people when they come in with a particular mindset. I love when they come in with an open mindset, because that's really easy to work with. Although occasionally, more than occasionally, you get the mindset that's closed because it actually serves to be closed. So, first of all, what for you is mindset for healing and mindset for disease? So I'm going to put that to Sue W just now.
So mindset for healing to me is someone who is firstly open to it, somebody who is prepared to go within to look deeply within themselves, to look at where they might not be serving themselves, and what they can change, and to be really committed to their health, their body, their well-being, so that they will do what it takes to get themselves into a healing phase process. And it's there within all of us. We all have that capacity completely. Mindset for disease is, for me, it stems, as you say, it's dis-ease. So it stems from not being happy with who we are, maybe not processing trauma, grief, issues, having a very negative mindset. There are so many things that make that our cells are not happy cells. And actually, if we have happy cells, our bodies are naturally in a much more healing state.
Thank you. Trudi, with the Reiki situation, how does that work with the mindset? Does it flow between and through and over, or does it actually still have a basis for blocking people?
I think the mindset is a really powerful tool, and everybody, if you've got if you've got a positive mindset, then it makes healing much easier on every level. I have people come in who don't believe in Reiki, and it will still get through to them, and they will admit reluctantly that they've had some kind of shift or a feeling or a sensation, where obviously if you have people that are very open to it, then they will experience the benefits much quicker, much easier, and much sooner once the treatment started.
Cheers. Bonnie?
Well, from my perspective, I take into account genetic, historical issues around disease as well, because I think it's really important to recognise that, the medical profession in itself has the knowledge and the understanding that genetic trauma actually has a massive impact in relation to illnesses down the generations. And me personally, when individuals come to see me, it's a private practice, so they're invariably open to change because they're paying for that change. They're paying to actually get the time to work through the unconscious. And often I find it's uncovering what's in the unconscious and bringing it to the conscious that actually allows that individual to process and change what they need to change to be of benefit for themselves and their lives and their relationships. And certainly for me, I know it's about my self-awareness. When you educate people about being self-aware and understanding how we react to our feelings rather than how we're taught, which is most human beings jump from something to a thought to a reaction and the consequences, well, actually it's the feeling that's provoked the thought, and it's understanding often where that feeling actually arises from. And often for me it comes from childhood, which is a very psychoanalytical approach, but I've got 17 years of seeing this in action and I totally believe it. So there you go, that's my approach. When they're open, it works. If you've got a good practitioner and a good relationship between the two of you, anything's possible. And that applies to every single way that we work, in my opinion.
Dreary, thanks. Susan Humphries.
Mindset for therapy especially for us, is a very important part of the whole journey when healing. Disease, it knows no boundaries, it hits everyone. It's from anything that one's experienced from childhood, it could be trauma, stress, and it's how the body and how you can get energies flowing to assist the body in healing, and just to counteract these traumas and just help people through their journey, from feeling very low to healing and coming out the other side feeling better.
Cool. Fiona?
Yeah, I get quite a lot of people coming in with a fixed mindset, particularly if they've been on the sort of diet bandwagon for so long, and it's learned behaviour. I find a lot with my clients, and they just sort of get stuck in these old patterns. But at the point at which they come to me, they are ready for some kind of change. So I kind of capitalise on that. It's like, grab that bit. And I encourage them. Sometimes they're not quite open yet, but encourage them to take these little steps to go, oh, okay, I can. So using curiosity to help create a more open mindset than coming in with a closed, oh gosh, this is what I've always done, I'm afraid. So a lot of that comes from fear, from what I find. Yeah.
Angela?
I think little bits of everybody. I think that the answer so far been like spot on. From I was like, you've stolen what I was going to say. But I think, Sue, your comment at the start about getting people before they get to the burnout stage, getting people before it gets bad, because once it gets bad, it takes longer to get through it. And the mindset stuff. If you catch whatever's going on early enough, it's a much easier solution to help back to good health, to wellness, however you want to put it. And I think that's so important, and that's the learned behaviour. And so Siobhain, you were saying about learned behaviour. For me, that's the learned behaviour that we want to try and encourage people to say when things start to look as if they're on that slippy slope to disease, or however you want to call it. That's when to grab one of us and say, help. And it is that open mindset. It's that wanting to change, wanting to be the person you were designed to be, rather than taking on board the woe is me, and I'm now stuck and I can't move forwards, and oh help. So yeah, I think that answers it.
Yeah. The thing is, though, it's getting people to understand that they are self-aware, they can be self-aware. And
absolutely,
the fact that there is a self-responsibility there. And I've been listening to Stephen Covey today, and some of the stuff that he's been saying has been ringing true and echoing down my own DNA lines of trauma, etc. And the language, and you know what I'm like with the language that we use on ourselves, the self-talk that we have to retrain ourselves to actually stop being reactive and be proactive. You know, and I'm all for being proactive, but you know, I end up looking like Achilles on speed when I start doing that. It's like, yeah, going in there, getting it done. You know, it's going to kill this person, and or not, as the case may be. But I think that we have to educate people in some way to make them understand, to allow them, not make them, but allow them to understand that they have more power and more self-responsibility than they give themselves credit for. And I think that starts quite early on. And we were talking last time about putting into school mindfulness and actually starting things at an early age. And I do believe that at one point we have to start teaching children how to be proactive, how to not use I can't as an excuse, and understand the consequences of I can't. So how would everybody think that that would be able to be achieved in some way? So open question, stick your hand up and we'll go for it. Sue.
So I think
hello.
No, sorry.
Sorry about it.
No, sorry.
I think it's helping people understand, or cultivating this whole approach that things happen by me rather than to me. Because it's very much, you know, a lot of people are stuck in like, oh, this happened to me and that happened to me, and you know, life is happening to me. Whereas if we can sort of foster and teach and educate about the power that we all have within, and that things happen by me. I create things, I create my health, I create my happiness, and it's what we do for ourselves. So if we could get that kind of teaching into schools, wouldn't it be absolutely amazing to create a whole new generation where they take responsibility for their thoughts, their actions, their behaviours, their feelings, and shifting that from an early age, because we can all change them.
Yeah, I mean, I liked Covey's way of saying, because I love splitting words up, and he said response able. You're able to respond in a different way. You're able to respond to that consequence, you know, and understand that there will be a consequence, whichever choice you make. And each decision is a choice, and every choice is a decision. So the consequence is there. And I'm just wondering about how that would roll out. You would have to have quite a forward-thinking school to be able to go and do that to begin with.
I
Bonnie?
almost think it needs to go in before school, but sorry.
Yeah, Bonnie?
Very early age.
Yeah, I'm just being aware of making sure that sticking up my hand, you know, that I'm going to come in there. I personally think that education in school is one of the most proactive approaches we can have. And if we start by teaching people children, how to label feelings. When we label feelings, we don't jump to the thought, and the thought jumps to a reaction, and the reaction creates consequence. When we actually stop and think about how we feel, we can learn to respond to that feeling in a much better way. So rather than the feeling controlling the way that we go, we learn to process the feeling in our own minds by being aware of the feeling. And just labeling feelings for children in particular, it's how I raised my son, because I speak very feeling wise. So I label every feeling that I've got when I'm expressing it. He's now like a mini therapist because he labels his feelings. So he'll tell me, you will irritate the hell out of me if you ask me one more time if I'm okay. And I say, no problem. When you want to talk to me, come and talk to me. I'll leave you alone. But the simple fact that he's able to do that shows the impact of a child being raised by knowing what they're feeling. And I think it's one of the most powerful things that I have to do in therapy is I start by helping people label what they're feeling. Because they often don't know, they don't focus on what they feel. They focus on the thought that's provoked by the feeling. And that leads to negative reactions. So it's almost like going backwards and undoing the cycle of our awareness to start with recognizing what the feeling is, recognize where it's coming from, and then change how we respond to it rather than reacting to it.
Yeah, we kind of need to draw a line in the sand at one point and say, okay, that's the past. That was then. This is now.
Yes.
Now we start to do it differently. And the habitual, almost knee-jerk reaction of going backwards into the familiarity zone, as Mr. Bandler likes to call it, which I agree completely, because it's not a comfort zone. It's a familiarity zone, you know. And again, with the bath of custard thing, if you're sitting in a bath of custard, it's not comfortable, but you're familiar with it. You know what that shit is. And basically, you're there because getting outside of it is going to be more uncomfortable and more unfamiliar. And we fear the unfamiliar. And I think that that's part of it as well. We're, particularly in Britain, very buttoned up the back when it comes to labelling feelings and emotions and actually expressing them with words. And another thing that came out of that Audible thing that I was listening to today was the fact that love is a verb. It's a doing word. It's not a noun that, that Hollywood has immersed in this whole kind of fluttering hearts and eyelashes and, oh my goodness, I'm just going to die if he doesn't love me, So I think that and another way of looking at relationships as well with that on board is something that would have to be done. How much do you think?
I was just going to say, I think your original question as to how do we get this in? So yeah, I think schools, absolutely, we need to get something in there. But what about getting into all these parenting self-help books? That would be the perfect place to put it in, because if people are actually following the parenting self-help books as like a guidebook Bible, then that's the best place to seed these thoughts of starting to think differently and starting to take responsibility for self.
It's true. It really is true. It's one of those things that we can sit and talk about until we're blue in the face, but until people actually start doing it, they're not going to understand how it makes a difference. And that's a lot of the times what we do is intangible until it becomes a tangible thing by experience. But we're not going to know how it works because we're not experiencing it. They are. We've already experienced it for us. So when it comes to mindset, the reactive, oh, I don't believe in that stuff. That's, no, all that stuff, no. Your mind can't do that. And that runs up against a fear mode as well. So we're dealing with fearfulness of change to a certain extent. How do we get around that? In our different ways, we must come against people who are coming to us with some idea, some prejudice of fear-based ideas of what what we're going to do when they come to see us. So
I think I've got a wee question along those lines. Trudi, you mentioned in your introduction that you've had people come to you that don't get Reiki. So I'm really curious as to why they've come to you, because I find I get clients that come to me because they've heard of it, they've heard me talk about it, and they want to try it because they think it's going to improve themselves. I don't think I've had anyone that's come to me that's not bought into the concept beforehand.
So I've had people that are curious about it because they've heard about Reiki, or they don't understand it, or they've seen me advertise what I do and they've gone, don't know what it is, but I'll go and give it a go. But they've come in with rather than coming in with an open mind, thinking I will go out feeling better, they've come in with don't know what it is, it's not going to make any difference to me, but I'll give it a go anyway.
That attitude sounds really bizarre, because why would you go and seek out a therapist to go and try something?
I've had it a few times, and I find it quite fascinating how people's minds work. And I don't know whether it's just the curiosity that I think their belief is that Reiki won't make any difference, or it can't make any difference. And rather than laying and relaxing for half an hour or however long we choose to do it for, they never fully relax. So they're on the couch and I'm doing the whole thing as I would do normally, but you can sense that they are not letting go fully. So they're kind of half there and half not, probably because they're scared to allow themselves to let go, to feel the fullness of what's on offer, because they don't get how it works. And even though I've explained to them and I've asked them if they've got any, expectations or questions at the beginning, there's still that fear there.
Coming back exactly to what Leslie you were asking in the first place, it's the fear factor, isn't it?
yeah. There's also I'm just going to go and do this and prove to myself that it doesn't work.
Yep.
I'm just going to tell everybody that it's just nonsense. And then something happens to them and you have to pick their jaw up off the floor. But
that was me. I did, as I said in our last one, it was a trainee. So it was somebody attached to my mum that wanted people to practice on. And I did go in with that. I haven't got a clue, but I am very open-minded to see what happens. And as I explained to you all in our first session, it blew my mind. I left there going, oh my God, I still don't understand what happens, but I left there thinking, wow, what the hell just happened? But not from a negative place, from an amazed place. So yes, I was one of these people that walked in and went, I haven't got a clue what this is about. I don't know what's going to happen, but you know what? I'll go with it.
I think that's true. We do get a lot of people who, because of how particularly in the complementary side things work, we need guinea pigs. And friends of mothers, sisters, brothers, aunties, twice removed, will drag someone by the scruff of the neck sometimes to wherever it is and just say, go and sit down there, you'll love it, it's great. But what am I doing? What am I supposed to do? I have to take my clothes off? Are you going to touch me? Are you going to do this? Are you going to, so they're kind of, it's almost like a hostile witness in court. They're like, being dragged kicking and screaming into the world of changing an idea. But amazingly enough, a lot of the times even if they have an experience that is like yours, Vonnie, they will actually be more afraid of that experience and will shut it down because they don't want to go there again, because they don't know what to do with it. Because we're not supposed to have that kind of thing happen.
I think it's like children, though, isn't it? That children are very open to spiritual experiences when they're younger, and they just go with it and they don't question it. They don't, they're happy with it. And then when they change through their different stages of childhood to adulthood, that shuts down depending on what's going on around them and the peers and the school and the expectations. And so we come back to the original question of how can we, re-educate children into accepting what is around us openly and knowing how to deal with it.
Do we think that the expectation deals with the word healing because of what people expect when they hear that word?
I always ask people, because expectations, it's a funny word for me. My mum always said, don't have any expectations and then you can't be disappointed. And I just feel that I always ask my clients if they've got any expectations, because I very much want to know what they want out of the session. You know, are they there for a specific reason? Are they there because they know Reiki works, or whatever it is? We want to deal with that before we even start. So I always sort of say to them, you know, has any, you know, if they're a new client, have you got any expectations? Do you know what to expect? Blah, blah, blah. So yeah, it's, I do think I think it's something that needs to be dealt with. And the word expectation perhaps needs to be changed to something else more positive.
Fiona, what do you find expectations for your clients? Do they want the moon?
Yeah, it's interesting because one of my clients recently, who was the guinea pig, as you say, you know, a friend came along who I'd asked, could I video a session with her to just help manage those expectations so that I can then show within my community a little bit about how it is, what it, you know, how what I do works, because I do energy work and also amalgamated with some more traditional fitness and nutritional training. And sometimes people are like, oh, not quite sure what that's going to be. So I'm using some short video clips and short trainings within my community to just kind of edge people in. And I kind of feel like I bridge a bit of a gap between the kind of traditional and the spiritual. So yeah, in some ways that's a bit more difficult, but I also use quite a lot of playfulness and curiosity and get people to do some more fun things sometimes to just experiment, and I love experimenting, so I use that quite a lot.
I think we all have to be, because we're curious people, otherwise we wouldn't be where we are now. Susan Humphries, what do you reckon?
Hi. The clients that I've worked with over the years, I tend to find they seem to fit into two slots, either the victims or the healing. So depending on their mindset, whether it's positive or negative, obviously has a huge impact on their healing. So you can work with very negative people that will obviously have a slower progress, and it's only by changing and encouraging energies and just keep working on them and keep being very positive for them, you can change their mindsets to be more positive within themselves, and then you start seeing the results of them actually healing. But you do find sometimes people that really don't understand the therapy that you're trying to give or the area you're trying to work on, that without sort of seeing a bandage, that they think nothing's actually happened or nothing's actually healing. And of course, very much so, it's all internal. So it's just the progress and to try and change people's mindsets. If it is negative when they come in, you know, to turn the head around from not being a victim. You know, they can't always control things. They might have regrets from their past. So there's a lot of emotions and things they might be holding on from their past, and it's just trying to draw these out from them, trying to make them light, not just within their heart, but also within their head. You know, it's helping them with the chakras, just trying to help them clear and to flow this negative energy out and encourage them into a better place through a period of time and through treatments, just being positive for them.
Yeah, the thing about the mindset of that, though, when you mention the word negative, is the fact that they identify with the story of the negativity, and sometimes it's a case of who am I going to be if I'm not the person with this situation. We have some neighbours, and the first thing that they wanted to do was tell me the story of their dis-ease, and their story was really good, and they were really good at it. And they don't even realize they're keeping themselves inside that dis-ease. And you know, you can say, and you just know that you're just opening your mouth and you're blah 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 blah. As far as they're concerned, that's all they're hearing, because they don't want to hear anything else, because their life wouldn't be the same if they weren't doing that. if they weren't telling that story, if they weren't in that story. So how do we, in our different ways, change people's stories?
Well, I educate. I always have a 15-20 minutes time with a client before they book in. I don't open them up on the phone because I don't think that's appropriate, because I have no idea sometimes what they're going to bring. So I give them psychological education to help them understand exactly what you were saying earlier, Leslie, about familiarity. And I use the example of the umbilical cord and a child being born with an umbilical cord wrapped around their neck, and that being their first extreme feeling of anxiety, in a very helpless position because they're babies, controlled by adults because they're babies. And ironically, what I've learned is every time I say that to somebody, without knowing anything about them at that point, they often are coming to me because they're having a panic attack on a tube, a plane, a lift, something where they're stuck. So the amount of times I've had somebody say to me, how did you know? How did you know? I had, I didn't. But it's an example of the familiarity of that person feeling stuck and trapped, and it provoking the anxiety of that baby that's being born. And that allows them to recognize that, one, I kind of know what I'm talking about, which is always useful for them to be aware of, but it's an education. And it allows them to actually see that they're not reacting in an abnormal way. They're actually reacting to a completely understandable way based on the history that they've got. And on the back of that, they book in. And on the back of that, my therapy sessions are very much about education as well as processing. I don't believe in having the training and not sharing what I know. I believe that the more the person in front of me understands about the process and their mind, that actually it's breaking that power of I know all and they don't. And for me, it's not I know all and they don't. It's just that they're in the therapy room and I've got the training. If I go into their role, and I use this example a lot, if I go into their job, I would be the one saying, how do you do that IT? I don't have a clue. So I use that example to help even balance them up in understanding that we're coming from a place of equality. There is no I and them, it's a we. And I find that way of working, it works for the people that I work with. Education and understanding and processing.
Are we finding that people are actually coming and just saying, here's my stuff, fix it?
For me personally, most people, because I do, if it's in a first appointment and I get the time, because I don't always get the time in the first appointment, I run through a particular form that I've got. And that format is event, feeling, thought, reaction, consequence. And I write out how they felt coming to the actual appointment. And 99.999% of the time, it is anxious, followed by, is she going to judge me? What is this going to be like? How am I going to deal with this? She might not like me, which obviously, I mean, I'm so used to that, that I basically just explore with them what that's really about, because they can leave at any time. So I take it to the depths of where that came from. And that in itself allows them to begin to see that, one, they're meeting a complete stranger and they're putting that trust in me. And being somebody, and I'm saying it with a smile, I know lots of amazing therapists, but I know many therapists I wouldn't put my dog in front of. So, and I'm being very honest. And the fact that they learn to understand that I actually want to help them, I care. I genuinely care about the people I work with. And if I didn't have that part in me, they would know it. You know, we all know when you don't get that vibe off somebody, that connection, you know, somebody's not really interested. And for me personally, if I'm not interested in the person in front of me, I shouldn't be in front of that person. Yeah. So I think they feel very strongly that I do genuinely care about them. And they're not paying me for my caring and my personality, they're paying me for my time. And we all pick up that vibe with people that we meet. We either get on with them or something happens where we don't. And I think that vibe is incredibly important to be really positive with.
Yeah. Sue Winsbury, do you find that with people with chronic fatigue, they're looking for a fast cure, fast, quick?
It's interesting. There are 6 very distinct phases with people who get chronic fatigue and burnout and fibromyalgia. They're always high A-type personalities. The first phase is always denial, because they haven't got time to be unwell. So they'll just push on through and they'll ignore the nudges from the body, and the body will kind of keep tapping and going, oh, I'm going to wipe you out this weekend. But they get up Monday and like, oh, I've got to go to work and I've got all these people to please and I can't let this person down or that person down. So there's denial. Then they will crash, and that's when the body just goes, sure, do you know what? You have not been listening. I'm just going to make you stop, and I'm going to make you properly stop. Then they will go into the external search. So that's when people can spend thousands of pounds practitioner hopping, looking for the quick fix. You know, they might try a bit of nutrition. That might do a little bit because that's important, but it hasn't fixed the whole thing. So they'll just say, well, that didn't work, so I'll go and try some kinesiology, and that might help a little bit, but it hasn't fixed the whole thing. And it's only when they start to go into the internal search and do the internal work and look at behavior patterns and their values and their self-worth and any trauma that's not being addressed, that's when the body will start to physically heal, because they're addressing the internal thing. So it takes the external support in terms of normally digestive issues, but also the internal search is where they will start to really heal. And then you have a recovery and relapse phase, because they might stop taking some of their supplements, or they might stop their self-nurturing practices, or they might give up meditation because they're feeling a bit better, so they won't bother anymore. And then people can move into recovery. So yeah, very distinct phases, but some people literally can spend thousands and thousands waiting or hoping for that quick fix. And it's about not being able or responsible. It's about wanting someone else to wave a magic wand and make them better, and it doesn't work like that. We can do what we can do to a certain degree.
Yeah, it when I was working as a vet nurse as well, if the dog didn't get an injection or a packet of tablets, it wasn't worth the consult money to them. You know, they had to get something had to be done, you know. So the idea that you were standing there in front of someone who actually had gone and did 5 years of university to be able to stand there and tell you what's wrong with your animal without giving it an injection, didn't just straight over the head. But it comes down to the difference between the word curative and healing, you know, because we don't cure, we're healing. Healing's a process. So Fiona, you will probably find similar to Sue when it comes to menopause, because in menopause there's a lot of degeneration of energy.
Yeah, but interestingly, there's also a gift in menopause. I talk about it being a bit of a gift. And as the balance of hormones changes and women can be slightly higher in testosterone, that can be the wake-up call to go, hang on a minute, I've been putting everyone else first, because this is very classic with the people who come to me, you know, putting everyone else first, it's now time for me. And so to jump in on that is a great point to do the kind of work that I do. And of course, I mean, I sometimes joke that if I had a magic pill, would you take it? Would you want the magic pill? And, you know, it's a rhetorical question, because of course they know that there isn't one, but there's still, you know, there's this desire to have the quick fix, and an explanation that even if you were to magically, let's say, lose, you know, a stone or, you know, 10 pounds or whatever overnight, that wouldn't solve your problems. And I work at 2 levels, so I kind of help women on the first level to understand their own energy and to get their own answers from their own body, so that they start to build up trust with themselves. And then when they're ready to do the deeper work. So yeah, it's kind of building up the know, like, and trust, and just helping them understand that actually what they're probably after, you know, they're looking outside for these external factors to help them feel good about themselves, when that's there all along. Just tap into that. I say just, you know, it's not just, but yeah.
It's the know, like, and trust. We all have to have that. Mm-hmm. And the understanding that when we've got that, that's our responsibility too. Angela, yes. You do a lot with energy, SAD and chronic fatigue and things as well, don't you?
I do. I work with lots of different things. So yeah, I've got a couple of clients that have presented with chronic fatigue, and for me it's the same process regardless of who comes through the door. Of energy balance first. Once we're in energy balance, we work the menu, and that's, if you ever speak to any of our tutors, work the menu is the main thing we're always taught, and it is just a case of work through what their body's asking for from our menu. But exactly like Vonnie was saying, we've got consultation forms as well. And when someone comes to me with that question of, this is what I want to work on, this is my main problem, by the time they filled out the consultation form, that's really not their main problem. That's a symptom of the main problem, or it's a side effect of the main problem. And they go through that and think, well, you know, that is a bigger issue, isn't it? But they've just not thought of it, because it's not just date of birth and a list of things. It's actually asking people to think about, well, how do you feel about this and how do you feel about that? And it's that holistic piece, isn't it? So it's not just looking at the symptom of, I feel a bit tired. It's looking at, well, what's going on behind the scenes? Is it nutrition? Is there something else going on that you've just not quite picked up on? And I think that's the important part, and I think, as everybody else on the call as well is doing, we look at the body as a whole, and we look at the mind as a whole, and it's that big combination piece. And it's not just a case of, oh, you've come to me because you've got a sore finger, let's fix your sore finger. It's all the bits underneath that's caused the psychological trauma to make the finger go sore, so that you've got a reason to stay at home. And I know a sore finger is a really silly example, but that's what I was aiming for.
I think so many people are stressed and they have such trapped negativity and emotions and suffering trauma. But I think, you know, especially when it's earlier on, they kind of box them up. They don't actually deal with them. And then later on in life, of course, they could come to you, as I've had before, where somebody says, oh, my back's hurting, okay. And within half an hour, they're crying or sobbing on the couch, and they're telling you about stories that they'd forgotten themselves that happened to them in childhood. And then all of a sudden they realise they've got 20 issues when they thought they only had maybe 1 or 2 when they first come to you. So yeah, sometimes by working with clients, you end up actually opening up a little box, if you like, and you find there are lots more underlining there than when they first come in. And even with consultations and filling out that little form, it doesn't incorporate all the questions, and it's not until you actually give the therapies, sometimes you actually get more coming out than you realise to start with.
And I guess on that point, the really important point to say is that we're not just going to open a can of worms and send folk home. It's done gently, and it's done with love and with care and with compassion. And I think as long as we make sure that we're including all of that into the mix, then we should never have a client leaving in a worse state than they ever came to us in.
No, this is fair.
Absolutely. I think, I think that sometimes people don't realise the traumas that they have, or they don't want to heal the traumas that they've managed to sort of box up. And then, of course, they come to you many years later, and of course, then all of a sudden you start opening the lid. And it's whether it's their time then to say, yes, I do want to try and now start healing. Now I recognise these, or no, put that lid firmly back down, or do it another time. I'm not ready yet. It's not the right time for me.
Yeah, I personally had the experience of that when I did my Reiki, when I had my first attunement with Reiki. And I was told that, you know, within the 21 days, there would be perhaps a little bit of an emotional outburst. Oh my good grief. 40 years worth of tears, of trauma, of that. And it happened when I was sitting eating my dinner. I was just eating my dinner, and it was like spaghetti with the chicken and white wine sauce, my favourite. And it just got to there, and then suddenly it just walloped. And this just came, and it wouldn't stop coming. And I've got the dog sitting there and the 3 cats going, what's going on? What can we do? And I had to phone my friend, who had been the reason she dragged me kicking and screaming to do this thing. And I was like, couldn't speak. And she said, Leslie, that you? I'll be there. It happened to me yesterday. And for me, that was a big awakening, that I was holding on to so much stuff And it was everywhere. It wasn't just in one place. It was everywhere. And I felt like the guy with the little finger in the hole in the dam, because every time I put my finger in one, another one would open up, and another one, and another one. So when we do this, there are worms and worms and worms and cans and cans and cans. But at the same time, once they get out of there, there's a hole that has to be filled. So we're kind of responsible for the refilling and re-educating of how to fill that hole up.
Yeah.
You know, when we do soul retrievals, that's basically what we're doing. We're filling up the hole, because it, you know, no matter how many drugs or alcohol or bad relationships or whatever you want to do to yourself that makes you feel not particularly good, but just feel something for that brief moment in time. But of course, that hole's never ending. It doesn't have a bottom. It's a bottomless pit until you actually put the soul part back in. So,
and I think a really key thing on that again is the fact that, and I know for kinesiology, I'm assuming it's the same for most other therapies, you're only going to go as far as you're ready to go. So
yeah.
if you're not ready to have, as someone I've spoken to recently calls it, if you're not ready to have the tears and snotters, you're not going to get to that stage. It'll come when you're ready for it, and not any sooner.
Yeah, and I also think what you said earlier, Leslie, about the familiarity. You know, people can be so used to being unhappy that they're actually frightened of being happy in case they lose that happy, because they're so used to being unhappy. And I must admit, when I think about every client that's pretty much ever sat in front of me, it's all gone back to the familiarity of what they're used to, despite the discomfort of what they're used to. And working from a psychotherapeutic perspective, I have to be really careful of my timing. Because as you just said, Angela, you know, there's a time and a place. I can work in a very challenging way, but I have to wait until the relationship is strong enough and that person trusts me enough to be able to talk to them in a much more direct way, which I do get to, but it depends on the context, the individual, the person, what we're talking about. So I'm incredibly conscious about their trust levels in me, because without that, you know, you can do real damage with people. I think that's one of the most important things to recognise.
Yeah.
Now, looks can be deceiving. Looks can be very deceiving. I mean, actually, we were talking about this today, and something had come on television, and I said, "Do you remember Droopy?" And that little beagle guy with the Mountie uniform, and he stands there with a face like a long wet weekend, and says, "Guess what? I'm happy." And looking at him, he's the least happy looking thing you've ever seen in your life. But at the same time, there are these masks that we all put on, and particularly when we're going to see somebody, because we want them to like us, Bonnie. We want them not to judge us. We want to be seen as careful, considerate, altogether people. But if we were altogether careful and considerate people, we wouldn't be sitting there in the first place.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And it was interesting what you said about, you know, your own recognition, Leslie, of having that meltdown after Reiki. I remember the first time I walked into studying, and the tutor, and I have a history, which I'm not going to go into, it's extortionate trauma. And having that tutor turn around and say to me, "Siobhain, it's your unconscious, it's not your fault," and explaining to me what the unconscious was doing and how it was playing out. Oh my God, that was my life-changing moment in understanding. And suddenly it was like a calling. It was literally like somebody went, "This is what you're going to do. This is your destiny. This is what everybody needs to learn. They need to know, they need to be aware of," because the power of our minds, it blows my mind, the power of each of our minds. And I think it's just incredible what we can do with our heads. I get blown away by our abilities and our capabilities, and I do honestly sometimes want to share all my knowledge with everybody across the entire world, but you know, I can't do it. It's little steps. We're getting there over 18 years.
well, yeah, I mean, but now we've got this media to be able
Yes.
to do this too. So in a small way, we're adding to that education and people understanding that we're human too. It happens to us too. We have to have that. Let me hit her on the head with the inspiration stick now. This is what you're going to do with the rest of your life. This is where you're supposed to be. With me, it took 3 cars, a bus, and an elephant. But that's another story. And it's one of those things that when we see people coming in and they say, "Oh, you know, I've not got anything exciting to say. I just don't feel right. I just don't." And it's a case of, you don't know what your purpose is, but you can't tell them that. Yeah, they have to come to that realization that they have a purpose, that they have a destiny, they have something to fulfill. And it could be just to be in the same place as one other person. It doesn't have to be that they go in like Sully Sunberg, whatever his name was, who flew the plane into the river to save all those people a few years back. And it doesn't have to be that. It can be just a simple sentence, a word, how we make someone feel. Because we can carry that unbeknownst, silently, for our whole entire lives. So what we're all experiencing when it comes to mindset and the mindset of healing and the mindset of dis-ease is that once we recognize that the mind is set a certain way, it can be reset. And we're allowing ourselves to understand that all we have to do is ask. And someone, when you ask them, like one of us, will be able to tell them how to do it. Or point them into a direction of someone that they know who can.
Yeah.
You know, we have all got different modalities and different ways of dealing with what happens with mindset. But the one thing that we all know is mindset is key to everything.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what our minds are doing, as long as it's doing it right in the right way for us. But of course, that might keep us in a bath of custard. Our unconscious mind, our universal mind might be saying, "Oh, you like that, do you? Quite happy there, are you? All right then. Well, just make sure you stay there tonight." Because the prime directive of the unconscious mind is to keep you safe and to keep you happy. And if you're happy being miserable, then go for it. Until you want to change.
Yes.
So to round off with everybody, because it's been an hour already, almost. So, Angela, how do you feel about where we are and what we've been doing?
I think just your last little bit there, I think what my takeaway from that is that it might be a mindset just now, but it's not fixed. And we are the ones that are in control of where we take our mindsets.
Trudi?
Yeah, I think mindset is such a powerful thing, and I totally agree. And quite a few people spring to mind when you're talking about they're happy in their unhappy zone at the moment because they're not ready to open up to the new happy zone. And when they are ready, let's hope, you know, whoever's the right person for them is there to help them.
Bonnie?
Oh, I just love the fact that we're all coming from completely different modalities. And I know me and Leslie cross a bit, but it's so lovely to have lots of women here and all able to communicate in such a positive way. That might tell you a lot about women in my life, but you know, it's actually really nice for me to have this. So I want to say a personal thank you to Leslie for allowing me to be involved, because actually I really appreciate strong, confident women, and you all come across so capable at what you know, and lots of stuff that I don't have a clue about. So I really appreciate the information that I learned from here already. So thank you.
Oh, I think you're so welcome, Bonnie, because we all bring something to the table here, and that's what's the important thing. We're a collective, basically. Sue W.
So, yeah, I just think we are capable of so much more. I think we're actually only scratching the surface in terms of mindset, the powers of belief. I think for anyone who is watching this that kind of wants a bit more hard fact and evidence, go and read Bruce Lipton's Biology of Belief. Great book. There's so much research about how our mind actually affects our physical body, that it's not just coming from, you know, therapies or people who think it's woo stuff. It's much more than that. We've got some amazing, incredible science about how our mind affects our body. So but I think there's so much more. I'm really excited about what we could all be doing in the future.
Great. Susan?
Just to say thank you to everyone, and it's an honour to be here. So thank you, Leslie, for organising this. Just to say that when anyone's ready out there and they're looking for healing, come and find us. And that trust, if you cannot see it, your body is healing. It just takes time. Be gentle with yourself, love yourself, get those chakras healed and cleared, get your unblockages going and flowing, and we're here to help.
And last but not least, Fiona, newbie.
Thank you for having me here tonight. And I mean, I think this kind of stuff, getting information out there to kind of dispel some of the myths about, you know, what might be happening and what's going to happen with my mindset. Are you going to do something really freaky or anything like that? Just educating, you know, as Vonnie was saying, as everyone's been saying, educating and encouraging people to try things. And I know I ask a lot of my clients to watch Heal by Dr. Joe Dispenza, who, again, with Bruce Lipton, you know, some of the amazing things that he's done with healing his vertebrae using the power of his mind. It is an incredible tool when we use it for good, for right. Yeah, thank you.
So basically, what you mind does matter, and your mindset is able to be set and reset. And thank you to everybody for being here, and we'll see you next month with a brand new topic, and we'll let you know what's going to be happening with that soon. So bye-bye.
Bye.